The rain came down in sheets over the small town of Redwood Springs, Oregon, blanketing the mountains and pine forests in a shroud of wet mist. Wind howled through the narrow streets, rattling signposts and bending trees like brittle straws. It was just past 2 a.m., and the storm showed no signs of relenting.
Inside the emergency entrance of Redwood Springs Medical Center, chaos unfolded beneath flickering fluorescent lights.
Nurses moved briskly through the hallway, their rubber-soled shoes squeaking on the damp floor. The ambulance bay doors slammed open, and 2 EMTs rushed in, pushing a gurney with a young woman barely conscious, writhing in pain. Female, 26, severe abdominal cramps, possible premature labor, one EMT shouted as they wheeled her past reception. The woman on the stretcher clutched her belly, her knuckles white, her face pale and drenched in sweat. Her long, dark hair stuck to her forehead. She couldn't speak, only gasps escaped her lips as the contractions came faster and harder. Dr. Samuel Reed, the senior obstetrician on duty, approached with urgency. He had been through hundreds of deliveries, some bloody, some miraculous, but the look in the EMT's eyes told him this one was different. "She's not due for another 6 weeks," the EMT said. "But something's wrong." She started seizing in the truck. Dr. Reed placed a hand gently on the woman's shoulder. "Emma?"
Emma Carter.
The woman opened her eyes briefly, recognition flickering in them. "My baby, something's wrong," she whispered, barely audible over the hum of the hospital's emergency equipment. "Let's get her into the OR," Dr. Reed ordered, already snapping on gloves. "Page OB, NICU, and prep for emergency C-section." The storm outside cracked with thunder as Emma was wheeled into the operating room. Inside, the tension was palpable. Nurses checked vitals, adjusted IVs, and readied the surgical instruments. The fetal monitor beeped erratically. "Fetal heart rates dropping," one nurse said.
"Sévère décélération."
Dr. Reed nodded grimly.
"We're out of time. Let's begin."
The scalpel sliced cleanly. Emma didn't flinch. The anesthesia had kicked in, but her body trembled involuntarily as her womb was opened. Dr. Reed reached inside carefully, his gloved hands searching for the newborn. He stopped.
"What the hell?" et murmure. Nurse Karen glanced over.
Her eyes widened. She dropped the suction tube she was holding. Dr. Reed pulled the infant out slowly, cautiously, and silence fell across the room. It wasn't a baby, not in the way they all expected. The small creature he cradled was covered in a thin layer of brownish fur. Its limbs were elongated, its fingers unnaturally flexible. The eyes were large, dark, intelligent. It blinked slowly and made a sound, not a cry, but a high-pitched keening note that sounded almost aware. A nurse stumbled backward, gasping. Another turned away, hand over her mouth. One of the interns backed up against the wall, eyes wide. "Is this some kind of genetic disorder?"
Karen whispered.
Dr. Reed didn't respond immediately. He laid the creature gently on a sterile blanket, examining it more closely. The creature moved slightly, gripping his finger with one oddly dexterous hand. "No deformity explains this," he said softly. "This isn't a mutation. It's something else."
Emma stirred.
Though still under sedation, she murmured, "My baby, is he okay?" Dr. Reed looked at the creature, then back at Emma. "Yes," he said. "He's alive." The nurses looked at each other, uncertain. No one dared ask what to do next. In the following hours, the newborn was transferred to the neonatal observation unit, separated from other infants. Only a few doctors were allowed to see him. Photos were forbidden. The hospital staff was given strict instructions: do not speak of what happened in or to. But secrets, especially those born of fear, do not stay buried long. Within hours, a blurry cell phone image of a medical report was sent anonymously through a private hospital chat group. It showed a DNA test confirming the infant's maternal connection to Emma Carter, 99.8% match. No chromosomal abnormalities.
No animal DNA contamination.
And yet, the baby was not human. By dawn, the story had leaked to the outside world. A tabloid headline screamed from someone's Twitter post. "Woman in Oregon gives birth to a primate?" Hashtags started trending. Conspiracy theorists and science bloggers ran wild. Comment sections overflowed with speculation: genetic engineering, alien interference, government cover-up. In the maternity wing, security was doubled. Dr. Reed sat alone in his office, the report open on his desk, his hands trembling slightly. He stared at the numbers. The genome was clean. No splicing, no animal cross DNA. Just a nearly perfect match to the mother, and yet, the result was that. He reached for his phone. A number he hadn't dialed in years.
The line rang.
Marcus, he said when it picked up.
I need your help. Allons pause.
Then a voice, cold, tired, and wary.
Reed? I thought you said you'd never call me again.
I didn't think I'd ever see this.
Another pause. I'll meet you. Bring everything.
As Dr. Reed ended the call, thunder cracked again in the distance. He stared out at the storm still raging over Redwood Springs, and for the first time in decades, he felt afraid. Because this child, this thing born under lightning, was no accident. And someone somewhere had planned it. By morning, the storm had passed, but Redwood Springs was far from calm. The hospital's main entrance had become a small media battlefield. Reporters with cameras and boom mics clustered outside the glass doors, their breaths fogging the surface as they shouted questions no one inside dared answer. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere was brittle. Nurses avoided eye contact. Doctors whispered in corners. The few who had been present in operating room 2 now moved as though haunted, their voices hushed, their glances sharp and fleeting. Dr. Samuel Reed stood before a closed conference room door on the 3rd floor. His badge hung slightly askew, and his lab coat was wrinkled from a sleepless night. He pressed his palm to the glass and entered. Inside, a dozen figures turned to face him, department heads, legal counsel, and hospital administrators. At the head of the table sat Dr. Evelyn Moreau, the hospital's chief medical officer. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her eyes were unreadable. "We've reviewed the initial findings," she said without greeting. "And I think you understand why we need to speak privately." Dr. Reed nodded and dropped a manila folder onto the table. "Everything's in there." Dr. Moreau opened it. Inside were the first batch of genetic tests run on the infant.
No anomalie in chromosome structure.
No indication of chimerism, mosaicism, or retroviral infection. The genome was fully human. In fact, the DNA profile was textbook clean, more perfect than usual. But the outward appearance of the child defied every biological model. "Is it a genetic disorder?" someone asked. "No," Dr. Reed said. "There's no known condition that matches this morphology. No syndrome accounts for the skeletal structure, the dermal hair coverage, or the neurological patterns we've seen on the EEG. And yet..." He tapped the report. "The child's DNA is a 99.8% match with Emma Carter. Maternal lineage confirmed.
No foreign DNA. No contamination.
No error." There was a long, strained silence. Finally, Dr. Moreau closed the file and looked around the table. "This never happened." One of the younger doctors blinked. "Excuse me. We are initiating a full lockdown of all medical records related to patient X. Physical files will be secured under Level 4 clearance. Digital access is revoked for all non-essential personnel. Anyone found sharing information, internal or external, will face immediate legal action. And that includes private messages." "You mean we're burying this?" another doctor asked. Dr. Moreau's eyes sharpened. "We're protecting this hospital. If this leaks any further, we'll be shut down, and everyone in this room will be implicated in something we don't even have a name for yet." The room fell into stunned quiet.
Outside the hospital walls, the buzz only grew.
Local news anchors speculated wildly. Fringe websites labeled the baby as the missing link or the next step in evolution. One tabloid claimed it was the child of an alien abduction. Another insisted it was a government experiment gone wrong. Dr. Reed ignored it all. He had more important concerns. That afternoon, he returned to the neonatal unit. The child, marked as Patient X in the hospital's internal system, was kept in isolation. The bassinet had been moved to a private corner room, monitored 24/7 by a rotating team of 2 nurses. Not that they needed to do much.
The enfant barely criait.
He mostly observed, wide-eyed and unervingly calm. When Dr. Reed entered the room, the baby turned his head toward him immediately. The doctor paused. Hello, he said softly, feeling ridiculous.
The child blinked.
His small hand lifted, reaching out, not with flailing movements, but something deliberate, controlled. Dr. Reed approached slowly, slipping on gloves. He leaned down, examining the infant's pupils, the hair growth patterns, the flecks of tendons in the wrist. The creature, no, the child, grasped his finger, just as it had done the night before. Dr. Reed's throat tightened. He wasn't afraid. He was awed. He stood there for several minutes, allowing the child's grip to hold steady. Then he whispered, "What are you?"
The child blinked again.
Behind him, Nurse Carla stepped into the room. Her voice was low, uncertain. "Doctor, we may have a problem." He turned. She handed him a tablet. On the screen was a digital copy of the genetic analysis report, posted on a public forum. Anonymous user. Uploaded just 30 minutes ago. Someone had leaked it. Dr. Reed felt a wave of nausea rise in his chest. He grabbed the tablet and raced down the hall, back to his office, where he slammed the door and began typing furiously into his encrypted terminal. The leak was real. The file had already been duplicated and mirrored across multiple servers. It was too late to contain it. Less than an hour later, his secure line rang. He picked it up, hand trembling. "Reed." "Sam," said a voice on the other end. Calm.
Familiar.
Dr. Marcus Lynn. Former geneticist. Once his mentor. Now off-grid. "You got my message," Reed said. "I did," Lynn replied. "I've seen the leak."
You know what it means.
"Do you know what this child is?" A pause. Then.
You have a guess.
"But I need to see him myself." Dr. Reed leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "I can't keep him here much longer. They'll come for him." "I know," Lynn said. "And you're not the only one who knows." There was static for a moment. Then Lynn spoke again, voice sharper.
Listen to me, samedi.
"If what I suspect is true, that child isn't just an anomaly. He's proof. Proof of something a lot of people have spent a lot of money to keep buried." Reed felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise.
What kind of proof?
The kind they kill for. And with that, the line went dead. Emma Carter opened her eyes to the sharp scent of antiseptic and the dim hum of fluorescent lighting. Her body felt foreign, numb yet aching, heavy yet weightless. She blinked, tried to sit up, and was immediately met with a stabbing pain in her abdomen. Her breath caught in her throat. "Easy," a soft voice said nearby. Emma turned her head slowly. A nurse, middle-aged, pale, with tired eyes and a trembling voice, stood beside her with a clipboard.
You're in recovery.
"You had an emergency cesarean.
The baby is alive. Emma's lips parted, but no sound came."
Her throat felt dry as ash. She licked her lips and whispered, where is he?" The nurse hesitated. "He's being monitored in neonatal isolation." Emma's brows furrowed. Something in the woman's tone prickled her instincts, something evasive, something fearful. The nurse avoided her gaze. "I'll let the doctor know you're awake." She left the room before Emma could ask more. Alone, Emma stared at the ceiling. A slow dread crept in, winding its way up her spine. The baby was alive. That should have been a relief. But why did the nurse look like she'd seen a ghost? She closed her eyes, trying to summon any memory of the birth. Nothing came but the pain. Then the screaming.
Then darkness.
And before that, her chest tightened. There were memories she had locked away. Or maybe they had been taken from her. A year ago. She had gone camping alone in the Ochoko National Forest, needing a break from the pressure of graduate school and a toxic breakup. She'd driven her car down a side road, pitched a tent beside a creek, and fallen asleep under the stars. She never saw who took her. She only remembered the cold. When she woke up, she was strapped to a metal table in a room without windows. The walls were white, seamless. The air had a mechanical chill. She screamed, but no one answered. There were figures, always covered in white gowns and masks. They didn't speak to her. They injected her.
Monitored her.
Took samples. Sometimes they spoke to each other in clinical, dispassionate tones. Subjects vitals stable.
Administrer séquence delta. Memory cohésion de grading.
Dosage will be adjusted.
Den nothing.
She awoke in her car 3 days later on the edge of a forest road, disoriented, clothes torn. The police found her wandering down the highway. She told them everything. They didn't believe her. Said she had a psychotic break, stress-induced. No drugs in her system.
No physical trauma. No évidence of assault.
Even her therapist said it could have been a lucid dream brought on by emotional burnout. Emma had tried to believe that. She forced herself to move on. Until 2 months later, when she found out she was pregnant. Now lying in the sterile hospital bed, feeling the hollow space where life had grown inside her, she knew the truth. They had done something to her. And she had carried the result.
The door creaked open.
Dr. Reed entered, his face somber. In his hands, he held a clipboard and a sealed envelope. "Emma," he said softly, "how are you feeling?" She studied him. "Like I'm not supposed to be here." He sat beside her. "You're safe. But there are things we need to talk about."
Emma said nothing.
He slid the sealed envelope toward her. "This is the initial genetic report on your baby. We ran it twice." She didn't reach for it. "I don't need a report," she whispered.
He needs the truth.
Dr. Reed took a breath. "Emma, the child is genetically yours. 99.8% DNA match. There are no signs of gene splicing, no foreign DNA. But his appearance, his development, it's unlike anything we've seen." Emma finally took the envelope. She didn't open it. Her hands were shaking. "Is he in pain?" "No," Dr. Reed said. "He's alert. Calm. In fact, his vitals are remarkably strong." She looked down. "Can I see him?" The doctor hesitated, then nodded.
Il LTQ myself.
He returned an hour later with a wheelchair. Emma slid into it slowly, every movement a reminder of the trauma her body had endured. They moved through silent corridors until they reached a locked wing labeled, "Authorized Personnel Only." At the end of the hall, a private room stood behind double-paned glass.
Inside, a small bassinet.
Dr. Reed opened the door. Emma held her breath as she entered. The child lay in the bassinet, swaddled in a soft white blanket. His skin was dark, lightly covered in fine brown hair. His limbs were long and thin, fingers curved, toes slightly prehensile. But his face. It was serene. And his eyes, large, black, shimmering with intelligence, opened when she stepped in.
Emma let out a soft sound, par gasp, par sob.
The child looked at her. Then slowly, he lifted one small hand toward her. She moved forward without realizing it. Dropped to her knees beside the bassinet. Reached out. His fingers wrapped around hers, gently. Not clinging. Just connecting. Tears streamed down her face. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Dr. Reed stood silently behind her. "I don't know what he is," she said, not turning. "But he's mine." She cradled his hand in both of hers. Then, something inside her clicked into place. A memory, sharp and undeniable.
The voices in the white room. Project Prometeux.
Embryonic retroactivation sequence initiated. Specimen will be viable within 1 year. She looked up, eyes blazing. "They used me." Dr. Reed nodded, gravely. "And they'll come back for him." Emma rose, holding onto the side of the bassinet for support. "Then we need to leave.
Tonight."
The old roadside diner just outside Portland hadn't changed in 2 decades. Its neon sign blinked unevenly, casting a sickly blue glow onto the cracked parking lot. Inside, the linoleum floor creaked under every step, and the waitress poured lukewarm coffee from a stainless steel pot without ever making eye contact. Dr. Samuel Reed sat alone in the back booth, his hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Rain streaked the windows outside, turning the world into a gray blur. He checked his watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes. At last, the door opened. Dr. Marcus Lynn walked in, looking like a man who hadn't slept well in years. He wore a hooded jacket, sunglasses despite the rain, and a scarf pulled up around his neck.
He slid into the booth without a word.
"You look like hell," Reed said quietly.
Marcus gave a DRY smile.
"So do you." Reed didn't waste time. "The child is real."
Emma Carteret's son.
"I saw him." DNA is clean. No splicing. No anomalies we can explain. Marcus nodded slowly, reached into his coat, and pulled out a slim metal USB drive. He set it on the table between them like a loaded weapon. This, he said, is what they don't want you to know. Reed hesitated before picking it up. He felt its weight, not just physical, but symbolic. He slipped it into his pocket.
What is it?
Marcus leaned in.
You remember Elixon Biotech.
Reed's stomach tightened. You told me you left that project. Said it went dark. I did, Marcus said. But not before I saw what they were building. Project Prometheus wasn't a therapy initiative. It was a genetic reset program. A reset. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. They weren't trying to cure disease. They were trying to unlock dormant gene sequences, ancient strands that modern evolution silenced millions of years ago. Genes tied to primal instincts, heightened senses, regenerative capabilities. And yes, morphological traits from our earliest ancestors. Reed stared at him. You're saying they tried to reverse evolution? No, Marcus corrected. They tried to redirect it. Not back to monkeys, but to a version of humanity that never existed.
A hybrid of the modern mind and the primal body.
Their theory was that these gene sequences could be reactivated with a viral vector, delivered to embryos during early development. Reed's voice was hoarse. Emma said she was abducted. Held in a facility.
Injected.
Marcus nodded. That tracks. She was part of the first off-the-books human trial phase. They isolated volunteers or abducted subjects, in remote areas, usually women with no strong family ties, and injected them with retroviral packages that targeted embryonic DNA during early gestation.
Redes Mindrild. And the child.
If he survived gestation and birth, Marcus said, then he's what they call a viable echo.
En eco-child.
The living synthesis of pre-human genetic memory and modern physiology. Reed leaned back, stunned. Marcus continued, his face grim. There were others.
Most failed.
Either the pregnancies didn't last or the children were born with massive deformities. But in at least 2 cases, something survived. Something they kept hidden. Reed's voice dropped.
Specimen zero.
Marcus looked at him sharply. You've seen that name? Not officially.
Just in whisper. Like a ghost story.
Marcus nodded slowly. He was the first. The one who lived. But he wasn't raised by a mother. He was grown in a surrogate pod and raised in isolation.
No empathie, no bondin.
He became exactly what they wanted. Pure instinct, high-functioning intelligence, zero attachment. And very, very dangerous. Reed clenched his jaw. They built a monster. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Reed looked down at his coffee, now cold. So why are you helping me? Because I helped build the monster, Marcus said. And because this boy, Emma's son, is our only shot at proving there's another way. That these sequences don't have to lead to destruction. Reed looked at him.
En Elixon?
They'll come for him. Quietly. With legal documents or black bag operations. They'll erase him, Emma, and everyone who knows the truth. Reed's eyes narrowed. Then we don't let them find him. Marcus pulled a second item from his jacket, a folded map, hand-drawn, marked with red X's. This is a safe route out of Oregon. If she can get past the checkpoints, there's a private refuge in the Bitterroot Mountains. Off-grid. Old military land. I have people who can help. Reed took the map. She won't leave without him. Of course not, Marcus said. But she needs to move soon. Because Specimen Zero isn't just a ghost story anymore. Reed looked up sharply. What do you mean?
Marcus hesitated.
There's chatter. Unauthorized biometric scans. Pulse activity detected in the Cascade Range. Patterns match his neurofrequency profile. He's active. Reed's heart skipped a beat. And he's looking for the child. Marcus nodded grimly. And when he finds him, it won't be for research. They sat in silence as thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Reed finally stood. I have to go. Thank you. Marcus gave him one last look. You didn't hear this from me. If they trace it back. They won't, Reed said. But if they do, I'll take the fall. He turned to leave.
Sam, Marcus Khaled.
Reed paused.
Make sure the boy survive.
Because he's not just proof. He's a choice.
The lights above the hallway flickered once, then again.
The hum of fluorescent tubes overhead was the only sound in the dim corridor outside room 3B. Inside the room, Emma stood beside the crib, fully clothed, a small backpack slung over one shoulder. Her son, wrapped in a thick fleece blanket, lay still in her arms, watching her silently with those dark, unblinking eyes. She didn't know what time it was, only that time had run out. Dr. Reed entered without knocking. He wore a plain windbreaker over his scrubs, and in his hand was a manila envelope and a set of keys. It's happening, he said. We just got a call from a private security firm claiming authority under emergency medical research protocols. They're Helixson. Emma tightened her hold on her son. Are they here? Not yet. But they will be within the hour. They're moving fast. She glanced down at her child. He blinked once, as if he understood every word. Reed held up the keys. There's a side exit through the maintenance hallway on the first floor. No cameras. Leads to the staff parking lot. Emma adjusted the strap on her shoulder. How far to the car? 200 feet. A nurse I trust already placed a duffel in the trunk. Diapers, water, cash. You'll have to switch vehicles within 24 hours. I marked a safe route on the map. He handed her the envelope. Emma took a shaky breath. You don't have to do this. Reed gave her a hard look. Yes, I do. There were no goodbyes.
No promises.
Just movement.
Silent, swift, deliberate.
They moved down the stairwell, skipping every third step to avoid the creaking boards. At the first floor landing, Reed paused and peeked through the door's narrow window. The hall beyond was empty. Now. They slipped through. Past the supply closets.
Past the fire exit.
Past the vending machines that hummed softly in the dark. At the far end, an unmarked steel door. Reed pulled it open and gestured her through. Cold air rushed over them as they emerged into the fog-choked parking lot behind the hospital.
A single overhead lamp cast a pale yellow light, flickering slightly in the mist.
A grey sedan waited in the far corner. Emma hurried toward it, keeping her son tight against her chest. His breath was warm through the blanket, his fingers curled loosely into the fabric of her shirt. Reed followed, checking over his shoulder. They reached the car. Emma slid into the back seat. Reed got into the driver's side, turned the ignition. The engine coughed once, then started. Headlights stayed off. They rolled slowly out of the lot, tires whispering over wet pavement. 10 minutes later, they were off the main road, driving through a pine-covered back route known only to locals and delivery trucks. The hospital disappeared in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the night. Inside the car, Emma spoke for the first time in minutes. Where are we going? There's a ranger's cabin in the Cascades. Abandoned, but still intact. It's off the grid.
You'll be safe for now.
Emma nodded. She looked down at her son. He was awake, eyes wide, not crying. I don't think he's afraid, she murmured. Reed didn't take his eyes off the road. He's processing. Everything. He knows. Yes.
Silence fell again.
Then Emma said, what happens next? Reed's jaw clenched.
Next, you vanish.
And I make noise, just enough to mislead them. Emma looked at him sharply. They'll come after you. They already are. She reached forward, placed a hand on his shoulder. Thank you. Reed didn't respond. They reached the ranger station just past midnight. Hidden behind a curtain of evergreens, it was a squat wooden structure with a tin roof and a brick chimney. Moss clung to the siding. The place smelled of pine and ash.
Reed keyed the engine and stepped out.
Inside, the cabin was surprisingly well preserved. A fireplace, a table, 2 chairs, an old cot, and a corner pantry stocked with canned goods. Dusty, but serviceable. Emma laid her son on the cot and sat beside him. Reed lit a lantern and placed it on the table. I'll stay until dawn, he said. Then I go back. Emma nodded. They didn't talk much after that. There was nothing left to say. At 4:13 a.m., a black SUV pulled into the hospital's front lot. 3 men stepped out, all in charcoal gray suits, all carrying black briefcases. One flashed an ID to security, Federal Genetic Oversight Division. It was fake. Inside, they walked with authority, asking for Dr. Reed. The nurse on night duty called his office. No answer. One of the men looked around.
No security footage from the south stairwell.
Just went offline an hour ago, the guard said. The man turned to his associate. He's gone. They moved with precision.
Room 3B, empty.
Neonatal unit, cleared out. In the parking lot, tire tracks were still fresh. Send the drone teams, the lead agent said.
Full grid sweep, 30 mile radius.
Use heat sensors. He paused, then tapped an encrypted line on his wrist communicator. I want subject 0 notified. If the child is in the wild, we'll need him.
Der was silence on the line.
Then a single reply. Subject 0 is already en route. Back in the cabin, as dawn broke, Emma stood by the window, her baby asleep in a bundle behind her.
She watched the sunrise through the trees.
For a moment, it looked like fire was catching in the sky. Reed placed a hand on her shoulder. They'll search everything between here and Portland within 48 hours. I won't stay, she said. I just needed one night. Reed nodded. He took one last look at the child. He's not what they think he is, he said.
Not a weapon.
Not a mistake. Emma looked down at her son, now quietly stirring. No, she whispered. He's a beginning. 7 years passed like a quiet wind through the evergreens. In the depths of the Cascade Mountains, far from any paved road or cell tower, a single cabin stood beneath the ancient canopy of fir and cedar. No electricity. No address. No visitors. Inside lived Emma Cotter and her son, Noah. He was no longer the swaddled infant she once clutched against her chest while fleeing the headlights of men in gray. He was now 7, tall for his age, with limbs lean and strong, skin dappled with fine, soft hair, and eyes darker than the deepest forest well. Noah had never been to school. He had never seen a smartphone, never eaten fast food, never ridden in a car since the night of their escape. And yet, he was learning faster than Emma could teach. At 4, he was reading. At 5, he began memorizing pages of books after a single reading. By 6, he spoke fluent Spanish and was teaching himself Latin from a survivalist's collection of old textbooks stored in the cabin's attic. But it wasn't just intelligence that made Noah different. It was how the forest seemed to listen to him. Birds perched calmly on his shoulders. Deer didn't run. Coyotes circled him like siblings. Even the trees seemed to shift when he passed, as if acknowledging his presence.
Emma Sawitol.
And though she never spoke it aloud, a deep fear had taken root inside her.
Because the world outside hadn't forgotten.
And because she knew her son wasn't just gifted. He was changing. Each year, the differences became more visible. The way he could climb trees like no human child should. The way his senses picked up faint sounds miles away. The way he could sit silently for hours and name every creature within 100 yards without moving. And most unsettling of all, the dreams. Noah began having them around his 7th birthday. He would wake in the middle of the night, panting, eyes wide, speaking in languages Emma didn't recognize. Sometimes he would whisper the names of people they'd never met. Other times he spoke of places buried beneath mountains, laboratories under the sea, lights that pulsed with strange rhythms. Emma never told him about Helixon. She never told him about the men who created him. And yet, part of her knew, he remembered. Not through memory, but through imprint. Like a genetic echo that vibrated through his blood every time the wind shifted. One late summer afternoon, Emma watched him from the porch. He was crouched near the creek, speaking softly to a raven perched on a mossy log. The bird responded, not with cause, but with a tilting of its head, as if truly engaged in conversation. Emma felt a chill that wasn't from the breeze. She went inside and locked the old gun cabinet. Not because she feared Noah, but because she feared who might come looking. That night, after dinner, Noah sat at the wooden table with a half-burned candle lighting the page of his sketchbook. He wasn't drawing animals, as he usually did. He was drawing faces. Strange, elongated faces with sharp brows, hollow eyes, and mouths twisted in a kind of expressionless cruelty. One face appeared multiple times, in different angles, always surrounded by jagged lines. Emma sat across from him, her tea untouched. "Who is that?" she asked, forcing calm into her voice. Noah didn't look up.
I don't know.
"Do you see him in your dreams?" He nodded. "Is he talking to you?" Noah finally met her gaze. "Not yet. But he's looking for me." Emma felt her throat tighten. "I think he was the first," Noah added. "The first what?" "The first like me."
The candle flickered.
Emma reached over and placed her hand on his. His skin was warm.
Familiar. Still human.
Still her son. "You are not him," she said. "You are not what they wanted to make. You are more." Noah's voice was quiet. "Then why does he call me brother?" She couldn't answer. 200 miles away, in a concrete facility hidden beneath a decommissioned radar base in eastern Washington, a bank of monitors flickered to life. On one of the screens, a red pulse began to glow faintly.
A voice crackled over the intercom.
Subject E08 reactivated. Technicians in lab coats gathered around the console. "Cross-check signal with archived frequency patterns," said the lead analyst. "Is it clean?" "Confirmed. Genetic resonance matches original sequencing. It's him." A figure stepped into the room. Tall. Thin.
Dressed in black.
His skin was pale, stretched tightly over his cheekbones. His eyes were unreadable. They all fell silent as he entered. He didn't speak. He simply stared at the screen. The red pulse blinked steadily. "Prepare a retrieval team," the technician whispered. But the man in black shook his head. "No need." He turned to leave. "I'll find him myself."
Back in the forest, Noah stood by the creek again.
The stars were out.
The moon carved silver passed through the treetop.
He looked up, then slowly lifted his hand and closed his eyes. Around him, the forest hushed. He felt it, like a ripple in still water. Something was coming.
Not a soldier. Not a hunter.
But something that once shared the same origin. The same code. Only this one had made a different choice.
Noah whispered into the night. "I'm not ready."
The wind stirred the leaves in answer. But there was no mercy in its song.
The wind changed just after midnight.
Emma felt it before she heard it.
The stillness.
The way the forest stopped breathing. No owls. No insects. Not even the rustling of trees.
Juste silence, complète, un natural silence.
She stepped out onto the porch, shotgun in hand, though she knew it would be useless if what she feared was truly coming. Behind her, Noah stood in the doorway, barefoot, his eyes fixed on the dark line where trees met sky. "He's here," he said. Emma turned toward him. "Inside. Now." But Noah didn't move. "He doesn't want to hurt us." She grabbed his arm. "You don't know that."
I do.
Before she could argue further, a shape emerged from the treeline. It moved like a shadow-given form, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a long coat that shifted with the breeze. His face, when it came into view, was sharp and pale, with deep-set eyes and a mouth carved into a perpetual expression of calm indifference. He stopped a few feet from the porch, hands visible, empty. Noah stepped forward, but Emma blocked him. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady despite her pulse pounding in her throat. The man looked past her, directly at the boy. "Noah," he said. His voice was low, almost melodic.
You've grown. Emma raised the gun.
I said, "Who are you?" He ignored her. To Noah he said, "I am the one who came first. The one they made before you."
The blueprint.
Noah narrowed his eyes.
Spécimen zéro.
The man smiled faintly. "They gave me that name. It is not who I am. I have no name.
Only a purpose."
Emma's grip on the shotgun tightened. "You're not taking him." Specimen Zero turned his eyes to her, and for the first time, emotion flickered, something like pity. "I'm not here to take him," he said.
"Not tonight."
Emma didn't lower the gun. Noah stepped around her, slowly. "He's telling the truth." Noah. He's not hiding. He could have killed us already. Specimen 0 inclined his head.
Ive don killing. Enough to know it solve nothing.
Then why are you here? Noah asked. To offer you a choice. Noah stepped off the porch, now only a few feet away.
What kind of choice?
Specimen 0 gestured toward the forest behind him. There are more of us. Others who were made, half-born, hunted, erased. But some survived.
They live in shadow.
Afraid. Angry. Alone. He paused. You are the only one they would follow. Because you were raised human. Because you still believe in kindness. Noah looked skeptical. And that's a problem for you? It's a necessity, Specimen 0 said. Because kindness without strength is meaningless. And we need strength.
We need you.
Emma stepped down, standing beside her son. You want him to lead a war. Specimen 0's eyes flicked to her again. No. I want him to choose. They'll never accept what he is. Not truly. The world will always fear what it doesn't understand. Noah said nothing for a long moment.
Then, what about you? Do you fear me?
Specimen 0's lips twitched. No. I envy you. He took a step closer, slow, deliberate. You had a mother. A name. A life. I had steel walls and sterile lights. I learned to read by decoding surveillance transcripts.
Il irned tout qu'il before il irned to sleep without restraint.
Emma's expression softened slightly, despite herself. Specimen 0 continued, you were given the chance to become something more. I wasn't. But I'm still trying. He held out his hand, not as a threat, but as an invitation.
Come with me.
See them. Talk to them. Then decide. Noah stared at the hand, then at his mother. Emma's jaw was tight, but she didn't speak. He turned back to the man.
If he say no?
Specimen 0 lowered his hand. Then I walk away. And when the soldiers come, when they find you, you'll be alone. Noah tilted his head. Why help me?
The man's gaze darkened. Because if you die, I am the last.
And I don't want to be the last. The wind rustled the trees again, soft, like breath returning to the lungs of the forest. Then, from deep in the woods, a second presence stirred. No voices. Just the shift of branches, the subtle rearrangement of shadows. Specimen 0 turned slightly, sensing it too. They found you, he said. Emma's grip on the gun tightened again. Who? Specimen 0's voice dropped. The ones who built us. A low hum began to rise in the distance, electrical, mechanical, unnatural. Noah's heart raced. Drones. Specimen 0 looked at him, eyes calm. Choose now. Emma turned to Noah, her voice a near whisper. I can't go with him. Noah looked between them. Between blood and bond.
Between fear and understanding.
Then he turned back to the man. I'll come. Emma gasped. Noah. I have to know who I am. Specimen 0 nodded once. He reached out, touched the boy's forehead with the tips of 2 fingers. Then he looked at Emma. He'll be safe. Safer than he is here. And with that, he turned and melted into the trees. Noah followed. Emma stood frozen, tears on her cheeks, her arms empty. Behind her in the far-off sky, a black shape buzzed louder, cutting through the clouds. The world had found them. And Noah had stepped into its heart. They traveled in silence. Specimen 0 led the way through the dense forest, never looking back, his movements graceful and sure-footed. Noah followed, heart pounding, the air thick with scents and sounds he had never known. It felt like walking through a forgotten memory, something buried deep within his DNA, now awakening with every step. After hours of hiking, they arrived at a hidden ravine, masked by overgrowth and the natural contours of the land. 0 paused beside a massive boulder, placed a hand on its moss-covered surface, and pressed inward. With a low hiss, a narrow passage opened behind it. Noah stared in awe.
What is this?
Our sanctuary, 0 said. They stepped into darkness. Inside, the narrow passage gave way to a wide chamber, carved into stone, lit by soft bioluminescent fungus lining the walls. The air was cooler, tinged with mineral dampness and earth. From the shadows, shapes began to emerge. Men and women, or at least once human forms, cloaked in rags and silence, stepped out into the light. Some had elongated limbs, others moved with a simian grace. All bore marks of altered ancestry, fur, claws, ridges of bone where none should exist. They gathered around Noah. He expected hostility. Instead, there was reverence.
A woman stepped forward.
Her eyes were yellow, but kind.
"You're the boy," she said.
The one who lived free. Noah glanced at Zero, who said nothing. Another figure stepped forward, older, hunched, scarred. They called us failures. Disposed of us like lab trash. But you were born, not built. A murmur passed through the group. Hope. That's what he saw in their faces.
Hope, and something else, expectation.
Noah swallowed. Why am I here? Zero stepped beside him. Because they believe in what you might become. He turned to the crowd. He is the only one raised among humans. The only one who knows what it means to be seen as a son. A child. A person.
Whisper echoed around the chamber.
He can show us another way, Zero continued. One that doesn't end in blood. But the older man growled, stepping forward. Blood is what they spilled first. You talk peace, but what did it get us? Pain. Death.
Idun like animal.
Zero stared him down.
We survive. We crawl, the elder spat. The human ferues.
And what they fear, they hunt. We should strike now. Before they strike again. Noah felt a storm building in his chest. I don't want war, he said. The elder sneered. Then you're a coward. No, Noah replied. I've lived my whole life in hiding.
You know what fear is.
But I also know that hatred turns us into exactly what they say we are. The chamber fell silent. Noah turned slowly, looking at each face in the circle. I didn't ask to be born this way. None of us did. But we can choose what we become.
A woman stepped forward.
And what if they don't give us a choice? Noah's voice didn't waver. Then we show them we are more than what they created. A younger specimen stepped forward, a boy, maybe 12. He had the same wide eyes as Noah, a faint shimmer of fur on his cheeks. I want to be like you, he whispered.
Noah knelt, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder.
Then start by choosing kindness. From behind, Zero watched, arms crossed. Later that night, as the others slept or meditated in the tunnels, Zero and Noah stood outside on a ridge overlooking the valley.
A full moon bathed the world in silver.
You spoke well, Zero said. Noah looked at him. But they didn't all agree. They won't. Not yet. Will you follow me if I don't choose war? Zero was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I once believed violence was the only answer. But I've watched too many of us fall, fighting shadows. He turned to Noah. You remind me of who we could have been. Noah nodded. I want to believe peace is possible. But you also need to be ready, Zero warned.
Because election is coming.
And they don't care who you are.
Only what you are.
Miles away, inside a reinforced underground facility, the final pieces were falling into place. Surveillance drones had picked up heat signatures in the cascades. Unregistered activity. Organic but irregular. Biological pulses matching the echo sequence. In a control room filled with screens and code, a man in a dark suit reviewed the images. He was known only as Director Vance. The Alpha is with him, an analyst reported.
Vance said nothing.
Beside him, a scientist whispered, What are your orders, sir? Vance's gaze remained on the image of Noah, standing atop a cliff, his profile backlit by moonlight. Retrieve the child, he said.
Terminat the hauteur.
But sir, the scientist protested, the Alpha.
Can't be controlled.
He's an error.
The boy is the key.
The future of genetic warfare depends on him. He turned away.
No loose ends.
Back in the forest, Noah woke with a start.
The air was thick. Electric.
He stepped outside, bare feet on the cool stone, and stared into the night. His eyes adjusted instantly. In the far distance, high above the trees, a faint red light blinked. It was moving.
Getting closer.
Zero appeared beside him. They found us, he said. Noah didn't flinch. Then we decide who we are. Right now. Zero's gaze sharpened. War or peace? Noah's jaw tightened.
No.
Defense. He turned back toward the tunnels.
Wake everyone. This time, we don't run.
The first drone struck just before dawn. It was silent, only the sudden blast of air and the high-pitched whine of propulsion betrayed its arrival. The explosion tore through the upper ridge of the ravine, sending shards of stone and fire through the air like shrapnel. The forest erupted in chaos. Inside the cavern, dust rained from the ceiling as the echo of the blast roared down the tunnels.
Scream rang out.
The young and the old stumbled from sleep, disoriented, blinking into darkness lit by emergency lanterns. Noah was already moving. He sprinted through the corridor, heart pounding, senses flaring. Every vibration in the stone walls, every scent in the air, every change in pressure, he felt it all. He wasn't running. He was tracking. Zero met him near the central chamber, his coat singed, a shallow cut across his forehead. They've sealed the western exit, Zero said. Thermal drones.
Targeting its signature.
They want to trap us inside. Evacuate through the north shaft, Noah ordered. It's narrow, but it leads beyond the ridge. You said it was too small for vehicles. Zero nodded.
What about you?
Noah glanced toward the entrance where smoke was beginning to curl through the opening. I'm staying. Zero grabbed his arm. They'll kill you. Noah's eyes were calm, resolute. Not before I show them what they created. He turned and ran toward the front, leaping over fallen debris and sliding down the slope to the outer mouth of the ravine. Above, the forest was burning.
Flamme liquaient the treetop, casting long shadow that twisted and danced.
Black SUVs had surrounded the perimeter. Dozens of armed men in tactical gear moved through the smoke, infrared visors scanning every surface. Overhead, 3 drones hovered like vultures, silent, waiting. Noah stepped out into the clearing. He didn't hide. The moment he did, every weapon turned toward him. Hands in the air. A voice barked through a loudspeaker. Do not move.
Noah résédit sans slowly.
He looked small, barefoot, unarmed.
A boy with strange eyes and strange blood.
And yet the soldiers hesitated. Something about the stillness around him, the way the smoke parted, the way the animals, owls, foxes, even a black bear, stood just beyond the trees, watching, unmoving. Target acquired, said a soldier into his comms. Subject E08 is in the open. Awaiting orders. Inside a command vehicle parked just outside the tree line, Director Vance stared at the feed. Hold fire. The tech turned to him. Sir.
Vance leaned forward.
I want to see what he does. Back in the clearing, Noah took one step forward. The forest responded. Leaves rustled despite the absence of wind.
The air thickened.
The scent of ozone filled the soldiers' masks. One by one, their heart rates began to spike. Monitors beeped inside helmets.
Fingers tremblent en trigger.
Noah closed his eyes. And then he called. Not with words. Not with sound. With memory.
With instinct.
With the ancient frequency of life itself. It pulsed out from him in waves, like sonar, but deeper, reaching into roots and bones and blood.
The earth trembled.
Birds took flight. Every animal within 2 miles cried out in unison.
The soldiers staggered.
Some dropped to their knees, clutching their heads. Others screamed. Visions flooded their minds, memories not their own. Images of sterile labs, screams behind glass, children in cages. Every cruelty Helixon had committed, reflected back at them in raw, unfiltered empathy. One soldier dropped his rifle and began sobbing. Another ripped off his helmet and ran. Vance stood in the command vehicle, frozen. He's broadcasting neural signals, the tech whispered. Emotion-based.
Direct transfer.
He's not attacking them, he's making them feel.
No, Vance muttered.
He's awakening them. In the clearing, Noah opened his eyes. They glowed, not with color, but with presence.
With understanding.
From behind the ridge, the remaining specimens emerged, not charging, not fighting, but walking slowly, defiantly, standing beside him. Children.
Elders.
Survivors. Together. The soldiers didn't fire. They couldn't. Some turned away. Others dropped their weapons. The forest was utterly silent. Then, out of the smoke, a single figure stepped forward. Black coat. Pale skin.
Eyes like winter glass. Specimen 0.
He approached Noah slowly, then stopped a few feet away. You did it, he said. Noah looked at him. They needed to see. 0 nodded. And what now? Noah looked at the humans, confused, broken, weaponless. Now they choose. A rumble behind them made the ground shake. An armored personnel carrier burst through the tree line, cannons raised. Vance stood atop it, flanked by soldiers who hadn't seen what the others had. His face twisted in fury. Kill them all, he shouted.
0's body en said.
But Noah stepped forward. He raised one hand. The earth answered. The roots beneath the APC rose, thick, ancient, cracking through pavement and soil. They wrapped around the treads, crushing the steel. The vehicle groaned, then flipped, sending Vance sprawling into the mud. Noah walked toward him.
The director scrambled back, eyes wild.
You're just a mistake, Vance hissed. An accident.
You think you're something of God.
Noah knelt beside him. No, he said softly.
À meilleure conséquence.
He stood and turned away. Behind him, Vance lay trembling, helpless, surrounded by everything he tried to control and failed to understand. By nightfall, the smoke had cleared. The remaining Helixan forces had retreated. In the cavern, the survivors gathered around a fire. No longer hiding. No longer afraid.
Noah sat at the edge of the cliff, watching the star.
Emma arrived quietly, stepping beside him. I saw everything, she whispered. He looked at her. I didn't want to hurt them. You didn't. She knelt beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his face. You showed them the truth. He nodded slowly. I don't know what comes next. Emma smiled sadly. Then you're human. The fires died slowly, but the world did not forget. News of the Cascade incident spread like an untamed blaze. It began with whispers, anonymous military footage leaked online, blurry images of trees tearing through steel, of weapons dropped, of a boy standing barefoot in a clearing surrounded by creatures not quite human.
Then came the silence.
The official reports were redacted, rewritten, erased. Witnesses disappeared. Government spokespeople denied everything. The facility was dismantled before reporters ever reached it. But the footage survived. And in that grainy, unstable frame of light and movement, a single image lingered. Noah, his hand raised to the sky, eyes calm, while the earth bent to his will. 2 years later, the forest had reclaimed what was once Helixan's hunting ground. Where once there were tunnels and weapon stockpiles, there were now roots and wildflowers. The ravine had collapsed in on itself, sealing the past beneath soil and time.
Noah stood at the edge of the new forest, watching the wind move through the trees.
He was 15 now, taller, his frame lean and strong, his posture both human and something older. He wore no shoes, just earth-worn cloth and a necklace of bone beads, tokens given by the others. The others, his family now. Specimen 0 had left a year ago, quietly, in the night. He had said nothing of where he was going, only that Noah no longer needed him. You've become more than they ever dreamed, he had said.
Now you must choose what kind of dream you leave behind.
So Noah stayed. He rebuilt the sanctuary, not as a hiding place, but as a school.
Children came first.
From the remaining specimens, from scattered survivors, from distant tribes who had once kept quiet legends of forest spirits and gods in human skin. Then came the humans. Doctors. Scientists. A few journalists.
The brave, the curieux, the desperate.
They came in secret, through footpaths known only by word of mouth. They brought books, instruments, questions. And Noah welcomed them. He taught them, not about war or power, but about empathy. About how to listen without speaking. How to feel without judging.
How to witness and not turn away.
He never preached. He simply lived. And through that, they learned.
One morning, Emma sat on the porch of a new cabin, high above the valley.
Her hair was streaked with silver now, her hands worn from years of gardening and chopping wood. She sipped tea made from mountain herbs and watched her son speak to a group of children under the open sky. He had grown into a quiet leader, not by command, but by presence. He moved like the wind. Still. Focused. Purposeful. She smiled, not because he was powerful, but because he was good. She had feared once that the world would take him. Now she feared the world might never be ready for him. In a distant city, in a concrete office filled with blinking monitors and endless files, a young analyst flipped through an old archive. Redacted documents.
Project prometeux. Cascade incident. Subject 08.
She paused at a name, Noah Carter. The photo attached was 10 years old, out of focus, half buried in static, but his eyes remained unmistakable. She hesitated. Then she closed the file. Later that night, she left a single sentence on an anonymous forum. He's still alive. And he's building something better. By the time Noah turned 18, the valley had changed. Paths were paved with wood and stone. Rainwater was collected in cisterns. There were solar panels hidden beneath tree canopies.
A librairie carved into the cliffside. A circle for stories, for memory.
The old became teachers. The young became caretakers. Noah never claimed to be a prophet. He never claimed to be a leader. But when he spoke, even the animals paused to listen. He wrote one book. It was never published in the traditional sense. It existed only as a set of handwritten journals copied by those who visited. Passed along in whispers, in scans, in translations carved into driftwood and walls. It had no title. But the first line read, "Being born is not the same as being made. And being made is not the same as being broken." Years passed. The world shifted. The rumors of a boy who stopped a war faded into mythology. Some called him a hoax. Others, a miracle. But none could say for certain where truth ended and story began. And that perhaps was the point. Because Noah never returned to the cities. Never stood before cameras. Never claimed credit. Instead, he walked the trails. He sang to the rivers. He held the hands of the dying, and taught the children how to listen to trees. His legacy was not in headlines. It was in how people treated one another after meeting him. One day, long after Emma passed peacefully beneath a red maple tree, and long after the last Helixon server had been scrubbed clean, a girl arrived in the valley. She was 8. Skinny. Fierce. Mute from trauma. No one knew her name. Noah knelt before her, offered her an apple and a place beside the fire. That night, for the first time in years, she spoke. Just one word. Safe. Noah smiled. And in that moment, his journey ended, not in glory, not in conquest, but in trust. Because that was his legacy. Not that he had changed the world, but that he had made one corner of it worthy.